He was 7 years old the night he learned that some doors were not made for boys like him. The card was folded twice, wrapped in yesterday's newspaper because his mother could not afford ribbon, and tied with a piece of kitchen twine she had washed and pressed flat with an iron. Inside that card was a drawing of a birthday cake with 7 candles, colored in red and blue crayon, and the words, "Happy Birthday, Celeste," written in the careful, slow handwriting of a boy who had practiced the letters 3 times before committing them to paper. He walked up the long stone driveway of the Herov estate that night, holding that card the way another child might hold a live bird, with both hands, gently, afraid to crush it. He wore his cleanest shirt. His mother had ironed it twice. She had shined his shoes with a rag and a little bit of Vaseline because there was no shoe polish in the house. She had knelt in front of him at the doorway of their small apartment, licked her thumb, and smoothed down the one curl at the front of his head that never wanted to lie flat. "You go in there and you hold your head up," she told him. "You are welcome because she invited you. Do you hear me, Tavon? You are welcome." He believed her. 23 minutes later, a woman in a cream-colored dress with pearls around her neck put her hand on the small of his back and walked him, quietly, calmly, without ever raising her voice, through the marble foyer, past the tables of gifts wrapped in silver paper, through the swinging door into the kitchen, and out the back service exit into the alley where the caterers parked their vans. She did not say the word poor. She did not have to. She only said, "Sweetheart, I think there may have been a misunderstanding about the invitation." And then the door closed. He stood in that alley for a long time. The card was still in his hand. It was bent now, at one corner, where his fist had tightened around it without him knowing. He could hear music through the wall. He could hear children laughing. He could hear his friend Celeste's voice, high and bright, calling out someone else's name. He walked home, 6 blocks, in the dark, still holding the card. His mother was waiting on the front step because she always waited, because in their neighborhood you did not let a 7-year-old boy walk home alone in the dark without waiting. She took one look at his face and she knew. She did not cry. That is the thing you have to understand about Gloria Reed. She did not cry in front of her son. She sat him down at the small kitchen table, poured him a glass of milk that they could not really afford to be pouring at 9 o'clock at night, and she said the words that would build the rest of his life. "Tavon, you listen to me. You remember how you felt tonight. You remember every single second of it. And when you grow up and you have your own house, your own table, your own door, you make sure that no one who walks through it ever, ever feels the way you felt in that room." He was 7 years old. He remembered. 20 years later, a woman in a cream-colored dress with pearls around her neck would walk through the front doors of the finest event venue on North Sheridan Road, holding a booking confirmation in her hand, and she would not recognize the name printed at the bottom of that page. She would not recognize the name of the man who owned the building, but he would recognize her. This is the story of what happened next. My name is not important. What matters is the story. Stay with me until the end, because the final 5 minutes will change the way you think about dignity, about patience, and about the long, quiet arithmetic of the universe. Tavon Reed was born in a 2-bedroom walk-up apartment on the 3rd floor of a building on 63rd Street, in a neighborhood that the newspapers called transitional and that the people who lived there called home. His mother, Gloria, worked as a housekeeper for 3 different families across the north side of the city. She left the apartment at 5:45 in the morning and returned most nights a little after 7. She worked 6 days a week. On Sunday, she rested, and on Sunday, she took Tavon to a small Baptist church 3 blocks away, where the pews were wooden and the choir was loud and the pastor preached about a God who saw the ones the world tried not to see. Tavon's father was not in the picture. He had been, briefly, and then he had not been, and Gloria did not speak of him with bitterness because bitterness, she said, was a rent you paid on a house you did not own. She spoke of him rarely, and always with a quiet, closed kind of voice, like a book she had chosen to shut. The apartment was small, but it was clean. Gloria could not stand a dirty house. She said if the world was going to look down on her, it would not look down on her floors. The kitchen table was pine, chipped at one corner, covered on Sundays with a white cotton cloth she had inherited from her own mother. There were 2 chairs. There was a small television that worked most days. There was a bookshelf her brother had built her, made of 2 planks and 4 cinder blocks, on which she kept a dictionary, a Bible, a book of American poetry, and a small green notebook in which she wrote down every dollar that came into the house and every dollar that went out. Taven slept in the smaller of the 2 bedrooms. His bed was pushed against the wall under the window, and on the wall above his bed, his mother had hung 3 framed photographs, one of his grandmother, who had died before he was born, one of his great-uncle in his army uniform, and one of Taven himself at 4 years old, gap-toothed and grinning, holding a paper airplane. You look at those pictures every night, she told him. You remember whose blood you carry. You are not the beginning of anything. You are the continuation of everything. He was 6 years old the first time he understood that his family had less money than other families. It happened at school. A boy named Marcus, whose father owned a car dealership on the west side, brought in a birthday cake for the class. The cake was from a bakery. It had a picture of a race car on it, made of frosting, and the frosting was so smooth it looked like plastic. Taven had never seen a cake like it. He asked his mother that night if his next birthday could have a cake like Marcus's cake. She was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Baby, I can make you a cake with my own 2 hands that will taste 10 times better than that cake, because I will put love into it. And love, Taven, is the one ingredient no bakery can buy." She made him that cake. It was chocolate. It sank slightly in the middle. It had no picture on it. He remembers it as the best cake he ever ate in his life. Celeste Herov entered Tavon's life the summer he turned 7. Her family had bought a summer house. That was the phrase they used, summer house, as if a house were a season. 3 blocks from the little park where Tavon and his mother sometimes went on Sunday afternoons. The park had a set of rusted swings, a slide that was too hot to touch in July, and a wooden bench where Gloria liked to sit and read while Tavon ran. Celeste was there one Sunday with her nanny, a soft-voiced woman named Dolores, who wore a white uniform and called Celeste baby and Tavon young man. Celeste had long braids with beads at the ends. She had a scraped knee and a bandage covered in cartoon flowers. She was digging in the sand under the slide with a plastic yellow shovel, and when she saw Tavon standing at the edge of the sandbox, she looked up and she said, without any of the calculation that would later become her mother's second language, "Do you want to help me dig?" He said, "Yes." They dug for 2 hours. They were digging, Celeste explained, to China. She had a book at home that said if you dug straight down for long enough, you would come out the other side, and she wanted to see if it was true. Tavon did not tell her that the earth was round and that you could not really dig to China. He simply took the second shovel Dolores handed him, and he dug. By the end of that afternoon, they were friends the way children become friends, completely, without conditions, without any awareness of the small and terrible arithmetic of who lived in which house and whose mother cleaned whose kitchen. They played together every Sunday that summer. Celeste taught Tavon a hand-clapping game she had learned at her private school. Tavon taught Celeste how to spit a watermelon seed farther than any of the boys in her class could spit one. Dolores watched them both from the bench, and sometimes she and Gloria, who worked, though neither child yet knew it, for families in the same social circle, sat together on that bench and spoke in low voices about the weather, about their own children, about the small, private economy of women who work in other people's houses. At the end of August, Celeste's mother threw her a birthday party. It was going to be, Celeste told Tavan in a whisper at the park, the biggest party ever. There would be a magician, there would be a pony, there would be a cake shaped like a castle. "You have to come," she said. "Promise me you'll come." He promised. She gave him the invitation herself. It was printed on thick, cream-colored paper with gold letters on the front, and it said, "You are invited," and gave the date and the address. Taven carried that invitation home in the pocket of his shorts, folded twice, and when he showed it to his mother that night, she read it slowly, twice, and she was quiet for a long time. "You want to go, baby?" she asked. He nodded. She smiled at him, a small smile, the kind of smile that has more than one thing inside of it, and she said, "Then we'll get you there." She spent the next 2 weeks preparing, not the way other mothers prepared. She prepared by pressing his one good shirt 3 times, by shining his shoes with Vaseline, by taking him to the drugstore and letting him choose a pack of construction paper and a fresh box of crayons so that he could make the card himself, because a store-bought card, she said, was just money. A handmade card was a piece of you. He made the card at the kitchen table over 3 evenings. He drew a birthday cake with 7 candles. He wrote, "Happy Birthday, Celeste," in his best handwriting. He signed it, "Your friend, Taven." On the night of the party, Gloria walked him to the bus stop. She could not go with him. She had her own work, a different family's dinner party that evening. But she walked him to the stop, and she waited with him until the bus came, and she pressed a quarter into his hand for the return trip. And she said the words a mother says, "You are welcome, because she invited you. You are welcome." He was welcome, until he was not. The Herov estate sat behind a wrought iron gate on a street where the houses had names instead of just numbers. Taven walked up the driveway alone. He was one of the only children who arrived without a parent. He was also, though he did not yet have the vocabulary to name what he saw, one of the only black children there. He waited in line at the door. When it was his turn, a woman in a cream-colored dress opened it. She had pearls around her neck. She smiled at him, a smile that did not quite reach her eyes, and she said, "And who might you be, young man?" "Taven," he said. "Taven Reed, Celeste's friend." There was a pause. It was a very short pause, but it was long enough for him to feel it in his chest, the way a child feels a change in the weather before he understands what weather is. "Oh," she said, "of course. Come in, sweetheart." He came in. For 20 minutes he stood at the edge of the great room, holding his card. He watched Celeste, who was surrounded by other children, other girls in party dresses, other boys in small pressed collared shirts, laugh and open presents and eat a slice of cake shaped like a castle. He tried to catch her eye. He waved once. She did not see him. Then the woman with the pearls came back. She knelt down beside him. She put her hand on the small of his back. She said, in a voice so soft and so kind that it sounded almost like an apology, "Sweetheart, I think there may have been a misunderstanding about the invitation. Let's just quietly step this way, all right?" She walked him through the marble foyer, past the tables of gifts wrapped in silver paper, through the swinging door into the kitchen where the caterers stopped what they were doing and looked at him and then looked away, and out the back service exit into the alley. "You have a lovely evening, sweetheart," she said, and the door closed. He stood in that alley for a long time. The card was still in his hand. He did not cry. He would not cry until he was almost home, 6 blocks later, when a car passed him and its headlights caught his face, and he suddenly, for 1 second, saw himself the way that woman in the pearls had seen him. Small, poor, wrong. And something inside him broke that would take 20 years to reassemble. His mother was on the step. She took one look at his face and she knew. She took him inside. She sat him at the kitchen table. She poured him a glass of milk. And she gave him the sentence that would become the foundation of his life. You remember how you felt tonight, and when you grow up and you have your own house, your own table, your own door, you make sure that no one who walks through it ever feels the way you felt in that room. He nodded. He was 7 years old. He remembered every word. He was 11 years old the first time he walked into Odell's restaurant. Odell's had been on the corner of 71st and Cottage for 38 years. It was a soul food restaurant. Greens, cornbread, smothered chicken, catfish on Fridays. And it was owned and operated by a man named Marcus Odell, a lean, gray-bearded man in his early 60s who wore a starched white apron every day of the week and who was known in that neighborhood as the kind of man who would feed you whether you had the money or not. Tavon walked in that afternoon because he had seen a hand-lettered sign in the window that said, "Boy wanted, honest work, see Mr. Odell." He was 11. He was small for his age. He did not know what honest work meant exactly, but he knew what work meant, and he knew what money meant, and he knew his mother was tired. Mr. Odell was behind the counter, polishing a glass. "You looking for the boy?" Tavon said. It was not a question. Mr. Odell looked at him. He did not smile. He did not frown. He simply looked for a long moment, the way an old carpenter looks at a piece of wood before he decides whether it will hold a nail. "How old are you, son?" 11. "You in school?" "Yes, sir." "You keep your grades up?" "Yes, sir." "You steal?" "No, sir." "You gonna start?" "No, sir." Mr. Odell set the glass down. "You start Saturday, 6 in the morning. You sweep, you mop, you take out the trash. You do not touch the register. You do not talk to the customers unless they talk to you first. You call every woman ma'am and every man sir. And if I ever catch you calling a customer anything else, you and me are going to have a conversation you won't forget. You understand me, son?" "Yes, sir." "What's your name?" "Tavon Reed." "All right, Mr. Reed. I'll see you Saturday." That was the beginning of Tavon's education in hospitality. Not the education he would later receive at the university, though that would come. Not the textbooks and the case studies and the courses in food and beverage management. The real education. The one that mattered. The one you can only get by standing in a kitchen at 6 in the morning next to a man who has been feeding his community for 38 years. Mr. Odell taught him everything. He taught him the difference between cleaning and hosting. "A janitor cleans," he said one morning, watching Tavon push a mop across the floor. "A host makes a place ready. Cleaning is what you do so people don't get sick. Hosting is what you do so people feel welcome. You understand the difference?" Tavon nodded, though he was not sure he did. Not yet. He taught him the math. "Come here, son, sit down. You see these numbers? That's what we took in yesterday. And you see these? That's what it cost us to take it in. You subtract that from that, what do you get?" "Not much, Mr. Odell." "Not much is right, and that's on a good day. A restaurant doesn't die because the food is bad, Tavon. A restaurant dies because the owner doesn't know the difference between revenue and profit. You remember that. When you're grown and you got your own place, you remember that." "Yes, sir." He taught him about people. "Every person who walks through that door," he said, "is carrying something you can't see. A grief, a worry, a bill they can't pay, a conversation they had this morning that broke their heart. You do not know what they are carrying, so you treat every single one of them like they are carrying the heaviest thing in the world. Because sometimes they are. Tavon worked at Odell's every Saturday for 7 years. Then, when he turned 16 and got his working papers, he worked there 4 evenings a week as well. He bussed tables. He learned to wait tables. He learned to run the register. He learned to close out the books at the end of the night. He learned from Mr. Odell the small, daily arithmetic of running a business that served people and made a living and did not, ever, forget what it was for. He was 17 the first time Mr. Odell said the sentence. They were closing up. It was almost midnight. The last customer had left. The chairs were up on the tables. Tavon was mopping. Mr. Odell was sitting on a stool at the counter, drinking a cup of coffee, watching him. You know what the absence of hostility is, Tavon? Sir? The absence of hostility. Not being rude to somebody, not throwing them out, not saying anything mean. You know what that is? I don't know, Mr. Odell. It's not welcome. That's what it is. The absence of hostility is not the same as the presence of welcome. You hear me, son? A man can walk into a room and nobody says a single mean word to him, and he can still know, he can feel it in his skin, that he is not wanted there. And a man can walk into another room and nobody says anything special to him at all, and he can feel, the second he walks through the door, that he is home. That's the difference. That's the whole difference. And most people in this business, Tavon, most people who own restaurants and hotels and event halls, they don't know that difference. They think if they're not being mean, they're being welcoming. They are not. Welcome is an action. Welcome is a thing you do. You remember that. Tavon stopped mopping. He was 17 years old. He was standing in a soul food restaurant on the corner of 71st and Cottage. His hands were on a mop. His shirt smelled like fry oil. And in that moment, without quite understanding why, he heard his mother's voice from 10 years earlier. You make sure that no one who walks through it ever feels the way you felt in that room. And he heard Mr. Odell's voice in the present. And the two voices met, and he understood, for the first time in his life, what he was going to do. He was going to build a room, and he was going to make it welcome. He got into the State University on a partial scholarship. He majored in hospitality management. He worked full-time while he was in school, 3 shifts a week at Odell's, 2 shifts at a downtown hotel where he had gotten a job at the front desk. And every summer, he worked as a banquet server at one of the big convention centers. He slept 4 hours a night, sometimes 5. His mother, when she found out how little he was sleeping, cried for the first time in his memory. Not because she was sad, because she was proud, and because she was afraid, and because a mother's love, when it is real, is always half of each. He graduated in 4 years, with honors. He gave the small speech at his departmental ceremony, and his mother sat in the front row in a dress she had bought second-hand and altered herself. And Mr. Odell sat next to her in a suit that was 30 years old and pressed to a knife's edge. And when Tavon walked across the stage and took his diploma, both of them stood up. And Mr. Odell put his fingers in his mouth and whistled, and the sound was so loud it made the dean laugh. Tavon carried the debt of that education like a second spine. $63,000 in student loans. He carried it because he had to. Because there had been no other way. Because a boy from 63rd Street does not walk into the front door of the hospitality industry with a family name and a family fortune. He walks in with a diploma and a debt. And the debt is the price of the diploma, and you pay it, month by month, for as many years as it takes. He worked, after graduation, as an assistant event manager at a downtown hotel, then as an event manager, Then, 3 years in, as the director of banquets and events at a slightly larger property. He was good at his job. He was very good. He knew from Mr. Odell the difference between the absence of hostility and the presence of welcome, and he built that difference into every event he ran. Weddings, anniversaries, corporate galas, small, quiet dinners for people celebrating small, quiet things. He treated every one of them the same. Every guest, he told his staff, is expected. Every guest matters. He was passed over for promotion twice. Both times he was told it was a fit issue. Both times the promotion went to a younger, less experienced man who was, in the language his general manager did not quite use out loud, a better cultural fit. He did not complain. He did not argue. He simply started saving. Every month he put aside what he could, sometimes $200, sometimes $50. Once a whole $1,000 when he ran a particularly successful event and received a bonus. He put it in a small savings account and he did not touch it, and he did not tell anyone about it. And he watched it grow with the patience of a man who had learned patience at 7 years old, in an alley, holding a bent birthday card. By the time he was 26, he had saved a little over $41,000. It was not enough, but it was a beginning. Gerald Whitfield was a commercial real estate broker who had known Mr. Odell for 25 years. Mr. Odell had, one day, over a plate of smothered chicken and a glass of iced tea, mentioned to Gerald that he had a young man in mind. A good young man, a hospitality man, a man who had grown up on the South Side and studied the business, who was looking to buy his own place. Gerald had said, "What kind of place?" Mr. Odell had said, "Event venue. Not a restaurant. He wants a venue. Weddings, corporate events, the whole thing." Gerald had said, "You know how much money that takes, Odell?" Mr. Odell had said, "I know exactly how much it takes, and I know he doesn't have it. But he's going to have it. You keep your ear to the ground. When you hear something priced right, something we can work with, you call me." Gerald called 8 months later. "Odell, I got something." The building was on North Sheridan Road. It was an old event hall, a beautiful building built in 1923 with a marble foyer and a 2-story ballroom and original chandeliers and hardwood floors that had been polished by 70 years of dancing. It had been owned for the last 20 years by a family whose children had all moved out of state and who wanted, more than anything, to sell it and be done with it. It was priced at $940,000, which was, Gerald explained to Taven over coffee, about $600,000 less than it was worth. "Why?" Taven asked. "Because they're tired," Gerald said. "And because the neighborhood has been changing, and they think it's changing the wrong way, and they want out. They will take a lower offer from the right buyer, but you have to move fast." Taven looked at the number written on the piece of paper Gerald had slid across the table. $940,000. He had $41,000 in the bank. He would need, even with a generous commercial loan, at least $180,000 down. He did not have it. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I want to see the building." Gerald took him that afternoon. They drove up North Sheridan Road. They pulled into the parking lot. Taven got out of the car. He looked up at the building. He looked at the wrought iron gates and the stone facade and the wide marble steps leading up to the double doors, and something in him went very still. He knew this building. He had been here before. He walked up the steps slowly. Gerald was talking about square footage, about parking capacity, about the recent HVAC upgrades. Taven was not listening. He was walking up the steps. He reached the double doors. He looked at them. They were the same doors. He walked around the side of the building. He walked down the small stone path along the east wall. He turned the corner into the service alley. And there it was. The back door. The door in the alley. He stood there for a long time. Gerald finally caught up with him, out of breath, confused, saying, "Taven, what are we doing back here?" Taven did not answer. He was 7 years old again. He was standing in this exact alley, in the exact same spot, holding a bent birthday card in his hand. 20 years. 20 years, and he had walked all the way around the world and come back to the same door. He turned to Gerald. He said very quietly, "How fast can we put in an offer?" The offer was accepted at $892,000, which meant Taven needed, at minimum, $178,000 for a down payment. He had 41. He went to 3 banks. All 3 said no. Not because the deal was bad, the deal was, on paper, extraordinary, but because Taven was 27 years old, single, with $63,000 of student debt, and no track record as a business owner. He was, in the language of underwriting, insufficiently established. He called Mr. Odell. Mr. Odell was 71 years old that year. His restaurant on 71st and Cottage was still open, still busy, still serving the same greens and cornbread and Friday catfish. He had, over 38 years of running that place, quietly built something no one on the outside knew about. He had bought the building he was in, then the building next to it, then the building on the corner. He owned 4 properties in the neighborhood. He was not wealthy the way the people in the newspapers were wealthy, but he was not poor. And he had, in his life, kept his overhead low and his savings steady, and he had never, not once in 38 years, taken money out of his business for something that did not, one way or another, come back around to feed his community. He listened to Taven on the phone. He did not interrupt. When Taven was finished, he said only, "You come to the restaurant tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. We'll talk." Taven came. Mr. Odell was behind the counter, polishing a glass, as always. He did not look up. He said, "How much?" Taven said, $140,000, Mr. Odell, as a cosigner on the loan, not a gift, not a loan from you personally, just a cosigner on the bank's paper, so they'll say yes to me. Mr. Odell was silent for a long moment. Then he set the glass down. He said, "Boy, you have been working in my kitchen since you were 11 years old. I watched your mama raise you with 2 hands and a spine of iron. I watched you go to college. I watched you finish. I watched you get passed over twice by men who could not carry your water. You come in here at 6 in the morning and you ask me to co-sign a loan for you to buy a building on North Sheridan Road." He paused. "Son, I would co-sign a loan for you to buy the moon." He signed the papers that afternoon. The loan closed 6 weeks later. Taven stood in the parking lot of the building on North Sheridan Road. He was holding the keys. Gerald was next to him, smiling. Mr. Odell was next to him, quiet. And his mother. His mother was standing on the front steps of the building, in a dress she had bought second-hand and altered herself. And she was looking up at the double doors, and she was not crying, because Gloria Reed did not cry in front of her son. But her hand was pressed against her mouth, and her eyes were very bright. And Taven knew, he knew what she was thinking. She was thinking about a 7-year-old boy in an alley. She was thinking about a bent birthday card. She was thinking about 20 years. He walked up the steps to her. He took her hand. He said, "Come inside with me, Mama. I want you to see it." She came inside. He renamed the venue Reed and Company. The "and Company," he told the small crew he hired in the first month, was not decorative. It was theological. There was no Reed alone. There was only Reed and every single person who had ever helped him. His mother, Mr. Odell, Gerald, the 2 women in accounting at his old hotel who had taught him to read a balance sheet, the janitor at his university who had once given him $1 for the bus when he had forgotten his wallet, and every single person who would ever walk through the doors of the building as a guest. Every guest, he told his staff, is part of the company. Every guest is expected. Every guest matters. He wrote it on a piece of paper and had it framed and hung it in the back office, where his staff could see it every morning. Every guest is expected. Every guest matters. He built the business the way Mr. Odell had taught him to build a business. He respected the math. He kept his overhead low. He paid his staff fairly, a little above market actually, because a well-paid server, he had learned, is a server who smiles honestly. He turned down the first 3 vendors who offered him kickbacks, because he did not want his business built on quiet corruption. He served exceptional food, prepared by a chef he had personally recruited from a hotel in Atlanta. He kept the marble foyer polished. He kept the chandeliers dusted. He kept the hardwood floors gleaming. He opened for business in March. By June, he was booked 6 months out. Word travels in a city like his when a Black-owned event venue on the north side is treating every guest, every single guest, regardless of what they arrived carrying that no one could see, like they belonged in the room. Weddings booked, anniversaries booked, corporate galas booked, a charity ball for a children's hospital, a retirement party for a state senator, a quinceañera for the daughter of a man who owned a chain of pharmacies, a bar mitzvah, a funeral reception for a family who had lost a father too young. Every guest is expected. Every guest matters. He worked 80 hours a week. He was happy. He was, for the first time in his life, exactly where he was supposed to be. The email came in on a Tuesday morning in late September. The subject line said, "Booking inquiry, 40th birthday event." Taven's events coordinator, a young woman named Renee, brought it into his office at 10 a.m. She was smiling. "Big one, Taven. 200 guests, full bar, plated dinner, live band. They're asking about the second Saturday in November. They want to know if we're available." "Who's the client?" "Family called Herov." Taven set his coffee down. He set it down very carefully, as if it might break if he set it down any other way. "Say that name again, Renee." "Herov. Harrove. It's a mother booking a party for her daughter, Celeste Herov. The daughter is turning 40. He did not move. He did not speak. Renee waited. Finally, he said, "Renee, send me the inquiry. I want to see it myself." "Sure. Everything okay?" "Everything's fine. Thank you." She left. He sat at his desk. He opened the email. It was from Patricia Herov. It was polite. It was professional. It was written in the language of a woman who had booked many events in her life at many venues, and who expected, as a matter of course, without particularly thinking about it, that her booking would be accommodated. "Dear Reed and Company, I am writing to inquire about availability for my daughter Celeste's 40th birthday celebration. We are looking at Saturday, November 14th, approximately 200 guests, full plated dinner, live music, open bar. We have heard wonderful things about your venue. Please advise on availability and pricing. Warm regards, Patricia Herov." He read it 3 times. Then he closed his laptop. He got up from his desk. He walked out of his office, down the hall, through the kitchen, where his chef looked up and started to say something, and then, seeing his face, thought better of it. Out the back service door, into the alley. He stood in the alley. He stood in the exact spot where he had stood 20 years earlier, on the night of Celeste Herov's 7th birthday party, holding a bent birthday card in a small hand that had not yet learned how to be a fist. He stood there for a long time. He thought about what his mother had said. "You make sure that no one who walks through it ever feels the way you felt in that room. He thought about what Mr. Odell had said. The absence of hostility is not the same as the presence of welcome. He thought about a woman in a cream-colored dress with pearls around her neck. He thought about the door closing. He could say no. He could say the venue was booked that weekend. Renee had not confirmed yet. He could invent a wedding. He could invent a corporate retreat. He could quietly, professionally, without malice, without explanation, ensure that Patricia Herov and her daughter Celeste booked their 40th birthday party somewhere else. Anywhere else. And Patricia Herov would never know why. She would never know his name. She would never know that the venue she had just been turned away from was owned by the 7-year-old boy she had walked out of her house 20 years earlier. She would never know. But he would know. He would know that he had built a room, and he had built a door. And the first time in his life that he had been offered the chance to close that door on the woman who had closed hers on him. The very first chance, he had taken it. He would know that his mother's sentence had, in that moment, become something other than what she had meant it to be. You make sure that no one who walks through it ever feels the way you felt in that room. He walked back inside. He went to Renee's desk. He said, "Confirm the booking. Send them the standard contract. Give them the Sheraton ballroom. Give them our best. Everything, every detail. This event will be the finest we have ever hosted." Renee looked up at him. "Are you sure?" "I am completely sure." He walked back to his office. He closed the door. He sat down at his desk. And for the first time since he was 7 years old, standing in an alley holding a bent birthday card, Taven Reed put his face in his hands. He did not cry, but he sat there in the quiet for a very long time. The second Saturday in November was a cold, clear night. The Herov family arrived at 7 p.m. Taven watched them from the second-floor mezzanine, where he could see the foyer without being seen. He watched Patricia Herov step out of a black town car. She was in her mid-60s now. Her hair was silver. She was wearing a cream-colored dress and pearls, and Taven almost laughed. A small, tired, private laugh, because of course she was. Some women wear the same costume their entire life. He watched Celeste Herov step out behind her mother. She was 40 years old. She had the same braids she had worn as a child, though shorter now, and threaded with gray at the temples. She was wearing a dark green gown. She looked, Taven thought, and this was the thing he had not expected to think. Tired. Not tired the way a wealthy woman is tired. Tired the way a person is tired when the life they were promised has turned out to be a life they did not, in the end, want. The guests arrived in waves. Taven watched them from the mezzanine. He watched his staff greet each of them, the way he had trained them to greet each of them, with warmth, with dignity, with the small, precise attention of people who understood that every human being walking through those doors was carrying something that could not be seen. He came down from the mezzanine at 7:30. He wore a charcoal suit, a white shirt, a dark tie. He did not wear a name tag. He did not need to. He was the owner. Everyone in the building knew who he was. He walked through the foyer. He spoke briefly with his maitre d'. He checked in with the head server. He walked past the table where Patricia Herov was standing with a glass of champagne, and she looked at him, the way a wealthy woman looks at a well-dressed staff member she assumes is the manager, and she gave him a small, polite nod, and he gave her a small, polite nod back. And there was, in that moment, no recognition at all in her face. She did not know him. Of course she did not know him. He had been 7 years old the last time she had seen him. He had been small and quiet and holding a bent birthday card. and she had walked him out of her house through a service door, and she had not, he suspected, thought about him even once in the 20 years since. He walked past her. He did not introduce himself. He continued through the room. The event unfolded exactly as he had promised it would. The food was extraordinary. The service was flawless. The band was one of the best in the city, a jazz ensemble he had personally hired. The room glowed. The chandeliers shone. Every guest, every single guest, from the 80-year-old great-uncle in the wheelchair to the 6-year-old cousin who had fallen asleep on her mother's lap by 10, was treated exactly the same. With warmth, with dignity, with welcome. Every guest is expected. Every guest matters. At 10:45, Celeste Herov made her way to the small stage where the band was set up. She took the microphone. She thanked her guests. She thanked her mother. She thanked her husband, a man Taven had not particularly noticed, who had spent most of the evening on his phone. And then, unexpectedly, she thanked the venue. "I want to say," she said, and her voice caught slightly, "that this has been one of the loveliest evenings of my life. Whoever runs this place, whoever built this place, has done something extraordinary. I have been to a lot of parties in my life, a lot, and I have never once felt as welcome as I have felt tonight." She raised her glass. "To whoever built this room." The room applauded. Taven was standing at the back, near the double doors to the kitchen. He did not raise a glass. He did not smile. He simply stood there, and he thought about his mother, and he thought about Mr. Odell, and he thought about a 7-year-old boy in an alley. The event ended at 11:30. The guests began to file out. Taven walked to the foyer. He always walked to the foyer at the end of an event. He always thanked the host personally. It was, he believed, the mark of a well-run venue. The owner should be the last face a guest sees. Patricia Herov was standing near the door, retrieving her coat from the coat check. Her daughter was next to her. Celeste was laughing at something her mother had just said. Taven approached them. "Mrs. Herov, Ms. Herov, thank you for choosing Reed & Company for tonight's celebration." Patricia turned to him with a warm, well-practiced smile. "Oh, it was wonderful, truly wonderful. Please pass on our compliments to the owner." "I am the owner, ma'am." There was a pause. It was a very small pause, but it was the same pause. The same pause he had felt at 7 years old in a marble foyer, holding a card wrapped in newspaper. 20 years. 20 years, and the pause had not changed. It had only, this time, arrived at the other end of the room. "Oh," she said, I'm sorry. I assumed—" "No apology necessary, ma'am." He handed her his business card. She took it. She looked down at it politely. She started to smile the smile a wealthy woman smiles when she is handed a business card she does not particularly need. And then she stopped. She was reading the name. Taven Reed, owner, Reed & Company. She read it once. She read it again. She looked up at him. She was seeing him now. She was seeing him for the first time in 20 years. Her mouth opened slightly. She did not speak. Celeste, next to her, saw her mother's face. She looked at the card. She looked at Taven. She looked back at the card. And then, softly, as if she were remembering a word in a language she had not spoken since she was a child, she said, "Taven?" He looked at her. He said, very gently, "Hello, Celeste." She stared at him. "Taven," she said again. "Taven Reed, from the park." "From the park," he said. Patricia Herov had gone completely still. She was, Taven could see, doing the math. She was, in her mind, going back through the years. She was going back to a summer. She was going back to a house. She was going back to a party. She was going back to a door. She was going back to an alley. She looked up at him. She was going to say something. Taven could see her searching for what to say. Some part of her was going to apologize. Some part of her was going to explain. Some part of her was going to reach for the language wealthy people reach for when they are suddenly, without warning, seen. He did not let her. He did not need her apology. He did not need her explanation. He simply said, in the warm, professional voice of a host who is saying goodbye to a guest at the end of a lovely evening, "Thank you again for choosing us, Mrs. Herov. It was our honor to host you tonight. Please travel safely." He gave her a small, polite nod. He turned. He walked away. He walked across the marble foyer of his own building, past the tables where his staff was quietly clearing the last of the glasses, through the door into the kitchen, past his chef who was wiping down the counters, out the back service door, into the alley. The alley, the same alley. He stood in it. He looked up at the sky. It was cold and clear, and he could see 3 stars over the roofline. He put his hands in his pockets. He took a long breath. He let it out slowly. His mother had once told him, when he was very small, that the universe did not forget. That every wrong done was a small deposit in an account somewhere, and every kindness was another, and that one day, sometimes very late, sometimes so late you had almost given up believing in it, the account was reconciled. He had not, until tonight, believed her. He believed her now. He stood in the alley for a few more minutes. Then he went back inside to lock up his building and go home to his mother, who was 71 years old now, and who had, at her son's insistence, quit all 3 of her housekeeping jobs the day Reed and Company had opened, and who was waiting up for him, as she had waited up every night since he was 7 years old. 3 weeks after the event, a letter arrived at Reed and Company. It was addressed to Tavan by name. The envelope was heavy, cream-colored paper. The handwriting was small and precise. He opened it in his office. It was from Celeste Herov. Tavan, I have started this letter 7 times. I do not know how to write it. I do not know if it is my place to write it, but I could not, in good conscience, let another day pass without at least trying. I did not know for many years what happened that night. I did not understand, as a 7-year-old, why my best friend from the summer stopped coming to the park. I asked my mother about you in the weeks after the party, and she told me that you had moved away, that your family had gone somewhere else. I believed her, the way children believe their mothers, and I forgot about you the way children forget, and I grew up. I did not learn what actually happened until I was in college. My grandmother, my father's mother, not my mother's, told me the story one Christmas when she was drunk on wine and angry about something else entirely. She said, "Your mother put that little boy out of your party. Did you know that? She put him out the kitchen door because his mother was a housekeeper. That's the kind of woman your mother is." I did not believe her. I asked my mother. My mother said, "It was a misunderstanding. He was not on the guest list. I don't want to talk about it." I understood then that my grandmother had told me the truth. And I understood that my mother had, on the night of my 7th birthday, done something that I would not, if I were her, ever be able to forgive myself for. I am not writing this letter to ask for forgiveness on her behalf. It is not mine to ask. I am writing this letter to tell you 3 things. The first, the evening at your venue was the finest evening of my life. Not because of the food, not because of the room, because I have never, in 40 years, been in a room where I felt so completely seen. Every person there felt it. My uncle, who is a difficult man, said so on the drive home. My mother, who did not speak for the entire drive, felt it. I have thought about that evening every day for 3 weeks. I have thought about what you built. I have thought about what it must have taken to build it. The second, I am sorry. For my part, I am sorry that I did not see you leave. I am sorry that I did not ask where you had gone. I am sorry that I let a summer of real friendship end without a single question. I was a child. I know that. but I have carried, since my grandmother told me the truth, the small, heavy fact of having been a child who let something matter less than it should have. The third, I have left my husband. I filed papers 2 days after your event. I do not entirely know why I am telling you this. It is not related to you. Or perhaps it is. I sat in your dining room that night, and I watched the way your staff treated every person in the room, and I thought, for the first time in a very long time, about the woman I was raised to be, and the woman I have become, and the woman I could still, perhaps, choose to be. I am 40 years old. I have spent 39 of those years being the person my mother wanted me to be. I would like to spend the next 40 being someone else. I do not expect a reply to this letter. I do not want anything from you. I am not asking to be friends. I am not asking to be anything. I am only telling you, because you deserve to know, that the room you built has already begun to change the people who walk into it. Every guest is expected. Every guest matters. I hope you always know how many lives that sentence is quietly saving. With respect and with a debt I cannot repay, Celeste. He read the letter twice. He folded it. He put it in the top drawer of his desk. He never replied. He did not need to. Some conversations, once they have been had, do not require a second half. His mother died on a Tuesday in April. She was 73 years old. She died the way she had lived, quietly, in her own bed, in the small house Taven had bought for her 3 years earlier, with a cup of tea on the nightstand and a book of American poetry open on her chest. Taven was with her at the end. He was holding her hand. She said one thing before she went. She said, "You built the room, baby." He nodded. She smiled. She closed her eyes. She was gone. He sat with her for a long time before he called anyone. Then he called Mr. Odell. Mr. Odell came over immediately. He was 74 years old now. He walked slowly. He wore the same suit he had worn to Taven's graduation 13 years earlier. He sat with Taven on the front porch of his mother's small house. He did not speak for a long time. Finally, he said, "She was proud of you, son. I know. She was proud of you every single day. I know. You did what she asked you to do." Taven did not answer. Mr. Odell reached over and put his hand on Taven's shoulder. "You built the room, Taven, and you made it welcome. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing right there." They sat on the porch until the sun went down. Reed & Company is still open. It is one of the finest event venues in the city. Taven Reed is 35 years old now. He is married. He has a daughter. Her name is Gloria. Every year on the second Saturday in November, he closes the venue for one night. He does not book any events on that night. He does not charge anything. He opens the doors of the building to any child from the south side of the city, any child from his old neighborhood, any child whose mother works 2 jobs, any child who has ever felt the small, terrible loneliness of a door closing behind them. And he throws a party. There is a magician, there is cake, there is a birthday card table where the children can, if they want to, make cards for each other on cream-colored paper with real ribbon. There is no dress code. Every child is welcome. Every guest is expected. Every guest matters. His mother taught him that. Mr. Odell taught him that. An alley behind a house on a wealthy street taught him that. And the 7-year-old boy who once stood in that alley, holding a bent birthday card in a small hand that had not yet learned how to be a fist, taught him that. He built the room. He made it welcome. He kept his promise. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of a door that once closed on you, or a door you have the power to open for someone else, please share it. Somewhere in the world, a 7-year-old is standing in an alley tonight, holding a card, waiting for someone to see them. Be the person who sees them. Thank you for watching.